Hello, hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. And my name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and the moderator of this channel. The title of the present presentation is Race, Color, and the reconciliation between Judah and Ephraim. Race, color, and the reconciliation between Judah and Ephraim. And let me start, as I try to do, with definitions, but even before I do that, I am, with this presentation, only going to refer to an audio talk and give you the link to that audio talk that I did in January, which I shared with Brother Big Levi, and I can't remember now whether it was ever posted to his community page. It may have been, but I'm not sure. But in any case, whether it was or it was not, I do want it here now present on the David Messiah YouTube channel. The reconciliation that I refer to is here at the book of Isaiah chapter 11. And let me start at verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And verse 13, the envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. So this is the reconciliation of which I speak. It is referred to elsewhere in Scripture as well, and sort of, depicted by the figure of the two sticks, one stick for Ephraim, one stick for Judah, coming together as one. Well, this reconciliation will in part be a reconciliation across the color line, because as Scripture lets us to know in the book of Hosea, Ephraim has mixed with the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned, meaning to say he is Negro or brown on the bottom, but he looks white on top. And in recent uploads, one indicating that the king of the south is Russia, and also another one indicating that Messiah ben Yosef, referred to at the book of Obadiah, verse 18. And let me go there very quickly, just so we're clear. Now that what the so-called Jews refer to as the Moshiach ben Joseph, is Russia, same as he being the king of the south. And here we have at Obadiah chapter 1 verse 18, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh hath spoken it. So this is the one to whom the so-called Jews refer as Messiah ben Joseph, because he is going to be a prince of great power if he is going to be able to do this. Make the house of Esau for stubble, and kindle in them, and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. Okay, well, if Russia is that, and Brother Putin, to be sort of very specific about it, if he is the Moshiach ben Joseph, that is also saying that Brother Putin is an Israelite. As a matter of fact, of the house of Joseph, indeed of the seed of Joseph. And that was the assertion that I made in an earlier upload that addressed this question. And clearly, Brother Putin is what today would be referred to as a white person. But there's no necessary contradiction. One can certainly be white and be a seed line descendant by blood of one of the patriarchs of Israel. That is certainly a possibility. And I certainly allowed for that in the upload I did, that the so-called Jewish Messiah is not the David Messiah. Part of what I presented there essentially conceded that one they call the Yanuka Rav, I think his name is Shlomo Yehuda, who in Israel they're now embracing as that Jewish Messiah. When I checked with Urim, yes, I was told that he is of the blood of Levi. But still, because of the law of Deuteronomy 23, he cannot be of the congregation of Israel. And likewise, that Rebbe, the Chabad Lubavitch Rebbe, who some of them say is the David Messiah. He also, according to Urim, is of the line, physical bloodline of Levi. But he too is not of the congregation of Israel, because they went and they mixed with those Khazar people who are of not only a Japhetic line, but in large part also literal Gentiles. When I say literal Gentiles, I allude to the proper derivation of that word Gentile, which is one of those words that they have tried to hide that derivation from us, because the root of that word Gentile is originally Hebrew. It's clear from the Paleo-Hebrew pictographs what really it means. It means son of the wicked. There are two letters involved. Yeah, here it is, Gentile and Goy, where I was able to derive from the Paleo-Hebrew, making use of Urim and Tumim for that purpose, that the Hebrew word properly corresponding to English Gentile is a two-letter consonantal spelled Gya and Nun, comprising the aforementioned pictograph Gya depicted by a wick, and the pictograph Nun for seed or son. So this is this one right here, which they have essentially tried to hide. They've taken it out of the, it's no longer, that letter Gya is no longer present in the, is no longer present in the modern Hebrew. There it is. This is the 23rd letter here. Leftmost column, ancient Semitic or Hebrew. Leftmost column shows that letter Gya. They call it Ga, but it's really Gya. and it means twisted, dark, wicked. So Gyanun, which could be vocalized as Gyen, Gyen in effect, means literally son of the wicked. And it is from that you get the English word Gentile. That wicked one being none other but Gog, that Prince Gog. Properly his name is Egyogo, I have been guided. But anyway, he's a fallen angel. He's a Nephilim. So that titular son of Japhet, whose name was Magog, in fact was the literal physical as well as spiritual son of that fallen angel, Gog. So he is literally of a follower of Satan, of Lucifer. Okay? So this is what, and his line, his seed line, being of Nephilim seed, polluted the other sort of offspring of Japhet to such an extent that where they settled was not called the Isles of Japhet, but was called the Isles of the Gentiles. Because the sons of and daughters of Magog would have married into the other sons and daughters of Japhet. And it is the power of this pollution that, essentially all of them became, in effect, Gentiles in that literal sense of being sons of the wicked. And Esau also went and mixed in with the Gentiles. The grandson of Esau was Zepho, and in the book of Jasher we find out that he was made king over the people of Kittim, also known as Rome. And then Rome went and conquered the other isles of the Gentiles. So Esau is now completely mixed in with the Gentiles. Well, when we went to if we go to yes, if we go to where is it? Genesis chapter 10, where we learn more about Japhet. Verse 2, the sons of Japhet, Gomer and Magog. And Magog, as I said, was actually the literal physical seed line son of that fallen angel Gog. And Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Tiras. That was the first generation. And then verse 3, and the sons of Gomer, we have Ashkenaz. From Ashkenaz, we have the Ashkenazi Jew. And then if you go and research where the Khazar come from, the Khazar derive also from the line of Japhet. I think they might be sons actually of Ashkenaz. I'm not sure now. Okay, but there's no question but that titularly the Ashkenazi and the Khazar, who today represent about 80 or so, 90% or so of those so-called Jews, are in fact of sons of Japhet, titularly, and then in effect, sons of fallen angel, or mixed in or polluted by fallen angel seed deriving from that one called Gog. And in fact, it is worse than that, because if we go to Revelation chapter 2, they are called out. It's no longer an inference, really. Revelation chapter 2, verse 9, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, is referring there to the children of Jacob. So poverty pertains to us. But thou art rich. Why? Because we are the ones who are the chosen people to whom the earth belongs. We merely have to ask for it. And he goes on to say, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of who? Satan. So they say they are Jews and are not, as we've just, shown from the Table of Nations, Genesis chapter 10, that the Khazar and the Ashkenazi are essentially at best sons of Japhet. They're not Shemitic at all. But in fact, it's worse than that because they are so mixed in with the fallen angel seed that they could be called the synagogue of Satan or the house of Gog. This is what that phrase Gog and Magog, what it really means. It means the house of the Amagog, the house of the people of Gog. That's what that phrase really means. And if Gog is a fallen angel, that is a follower of Lucifer or Satan, that is quite the equivalent of saying that the Amagog are the synagogue of Satan. There's no real, material distinction to be drawn between. Now, I'm not saying this to bash the Jews, because a big part of the Jewish people today are Esau. Now, we already found out that Esau is indeed mixed in with the Isles of the Gentiles through that grandson of Esau named Zepho. Okay, so that for all practical purposes, Esau today, at least that part of Esau today, is also Gentile. Okay, but under Deuteronomy chapter 23, we see where in verse 7, Scripture says, thou shalt not abhor an Edomite. That means thou shalt not hate an Edomite. So even though Esau or Edom is marked for destruction by that Moshiach, Ben Joseph, Brother Putin, the law says we shouldn't hate the Edomites. I don't hate Edomites. I don't hate Esau. But if he's marked for destruction, that is at the hand of the Most High. And I can speak personally. I went to the University of Toronto in a department in the Faculty of Engineering that was certainly about 90% faculty there was Jewish. And I had absolutely, great regard for, I well remember Professor Ben Bernholz, who was the chair of that department, and another one, Professor Abram, who was, I think, a kind of a Czechoslovakian Jew. And I certainly, appreciated them very well and all what they did for me. There was another one, Posner, I think he was a New York Jew of some sort. So I learned a lot of statistics, stochastic type analysis from him. So I don't hate, and then I worked at the World Bank. I mean, if the World Bank is essentially controlled by Jews, certainly when I was there, the senior vice president that more or less ran the place, his name was Ernie Stern, I well remember. And I was offered a job right under Ernie Stern, which I declined for various reasons, but it wasn't because he was a Jew. Okay. Because it wasn't what I went to the World Bank to do. I went to the World Bank, imbued with the idea that this is an institution can reduce poverty in the poorer countries of the world. So I went there to do, poverty reduction types of projects. That's what I went to do. And I would have been in a very sort of, a very high up, but in a staff position, being used in a sort of a way to be like a shepherd dog, to keep tabs on all the various sort of vice presidents that were under Ernie Stern, but working from a much sort of junior in terms of age and in terms of rank position relative to those VPs, and I didn't want to be in that position. I wanted to be the one doing the project, not sort of trying to ride herd over people that were more senior to me. Okay. And one of my best sort of, I wouldn't call him a buddy because he was also older than me, but I well remember a Jewish fellow. We were great allies on various things, in any big organization you need allies. And I remember him telling me that he was related to Charlie Chaplin. And I definitely enjoyed Charlie Chaplin's movies. There was a fellow of great talent. One of his movies that I still enjoy whenever I get a chance to watch it. I forget the title of the movie now, but that same actor that was there in The Godfather, he was much younger when he made that movie. He made that movie with I can't remember. It doesn't really matter, but I thought it was just a almost perfect piece of filmography. So I don't hate anybody. This is so anybody that would bring the charge of anti-Semitism, really anti-Shemitism, against me is first of all, it is a word that doesn't even make any sense. Okay, and it certainly doesn't apply to the Khazar and the Ashkenazi people, because in the best case they would be Japhet, not Shem. Okay, and I certainly have no hatred against them. But there is stuff coming down the pike that's prophesied. Okay, and under that prophecy, yes, these people that say they are Jews and are not have a comeuppance to get. No, they don't have all of them to get it, because the David Messiah, part of his function is to be a light unto the Gentiles. Okay? Which allows for those Gentiles who wish to cleave, who wish to separate themselves from Satan, basically, and cleave unto Judah, will certainly be allowed to do that. And in fact, that was provided for. It's here. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord even to his 10th generation. Which means that indeed they can enter, just that there is a sort of a cleansing requirement. I didn't write that. That is what the Most High wrote, or had Moses to write. And if they are followers of the law of Moses, they can't now disclaim that. And here is Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 22. And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you. It doesn't exclude Esau. It doesn't exclude the Gentiles in its literal meaning, sons of the wicked, which shall beget children among you. In fact, the Deuteronomy 23 law assumes that some of them will indeed have children amongst us, but then it will take until the 11th generation for that seed now to join the congregation. And it goes on to say, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. They shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. So I'm going by the book. And if they're accusing me, because if they're accusing Kyrie of being anti-Semitic, then if they look at my book, The Coming of David Messiah, well, they will say the same thing, that book is anti-Semitic. And I certainly disclaim that. But guess what? I turn the charge around and fling it right back at them. Because they're the ones who have been racist, if anything, number one. Okay. And number two, I am offended at their behavior relative to my people, the Negro people. I have more of a complaint against them than they can ever have against me. Why? Because it's there in Scripture and it is there as we know in real life. I had a compatriot, Professor Tony Martin, that wrote a book, The Jewish Onslaught. And he was a Trinidadian just like me. He died fairly young, God bless his soul. But he was trying to teach from Farrakhan's book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And the whole of sort of the same way they're coming down, like a ton of bricks upon Kyrie and Kanye today, they came down like a ton of bricks upon my compatriot Tony Martin. And I know he is not in any way anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish or racist against the Jews in any way, because we didn't grow up like that in Trinidad. But here is Daniel chapter 11, verse 14. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. This is what Daniel says, this is what God says through Daniel the prophet. How are they robbing our people? Because they have stolen our identity. Because that's what we read then in the book of Revelation chapter 2 verse 9. They say they are Jews and are not. And how do they even get to where they could call themselves Jews? It's because they became quote unquote Jews by conversion. And that's what their own historians have written. Arthur Kessler, the 13th tribe, Shlomo Sand, the invention of the Jewish people. Well, I am BaYuda. And they are inserting themselves into that designation, stealing our identity. Says that they're robbers of thy people. Revelation 2:9. Those who say they are Jews and are not, that means they're stealing up my identity. And if according to my identity, we have this kind of a promise, and we have to be very, plain about these things. Verse 8. And this is now relative to the David Messiah, who is of the house of BaYuda, of the line of David through Solomon. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Well, if we can merely, say the word and effectively they become our inheritance, that means they become our servants. Does that mean that in some primordial sense I am asserting a claim of racial superiority? No. Why do I say no? Because it is not a claim of primordial inferiority or superiority of one race over another. It is simply and only that the Most High, the one who created this earth or had it to be created, made of us his chosen people. You, the so-called Jews, are not the chosen people. We, the Negro, are the chosen people. And that's what the word Negro actually, in effect, means, because this is another word they try to hide from us. The word Negro derives from the word nega, which was a praise title for David. It means the son who was watched over, the apple of God's eye, in other words. And that praise title came to mean king. So from nega, you get the word negra, or negar, or negro, and the variations of that. Nigara, in Latin is niger. There's so many variations of that. But all you've done is to introduce the letter resh in there to advert to the root, the tribal root of the nega David. And the tribal root of nega David is Judah. So the word Negro is a reference to the BaYuda, the house of the BaYuda. So Negro literally means the BaYuda people. That's who we are. And they've taken that word and they've turned it into a term of derogation. So now we want to call ourselves black, which is a word that has, the only meaning it has when you go back to the original Paleo-Hebrew is a thing of no worth, fit only to be thrown into the garbage heap. That's what the word black literally means. And neither are we African, because the word African comes from this one here. Verse 4, and the sons of Midian, Ephah and Epher. Epher, he is that one of the line of Midian, one of the children of Keturah, who, unlike all of his other brethren who were mixed up down there in the Arabian Peninsula, they made a move and went over to North Africa, westward of roughly where Put was, that Hamite name Put was. Okay, so that land there that Epher settled was called Epherka or Eprika. And that's where the name Africa comes from. Right? But we are not of the line of Epher, so we are not African. I'm trying to be precise about the use of words, because when you are not precise is when all this confusion can arise, as it has arisen. Okay, so, but as it is for Esau and the Isles of the Gentiles, they tended to turn pale of skin, because it was known, it's there in the book of Enoch, chapter 106, verses 5 and 6, when Noah was born, his father Lamech was a little bit alarmed because he came out an albino. He didn't have any pigment in his skin. And so his alarm was the idea that came into his head that that boy was maybe not his, but came from one of the fallen angels. So the inference from that is very clear that the offspring of fallen angels with human females tended to be pale of skin. So the Gentiles, indeed, as we do know, are in general, a white people. So that's one way where depigmentation can arise. The talk is about race and color, isn't it? But there are at least two other ways where depigmentation can occur. And one way is through albinism. Just as Noah came out pale of skin, depigmented, in other words, that's one way now for a pale skin vector, so to say, to come into as a feature among people. And the other way was what the Bible calls leprosy. Miriam was turned white, isn't it? Miriam was turned white when she and Aaron rebelled for a minute against Moses. And I won't give you the full story, but as to leprosy being a vector for bringing pale skin into humankind, I'll go only to 2 Kings chapter 5, which talks about the story of Naaman and his leprosy, which was cured by Elisha, that famous prophet Elisha. And Gehazi, who was Elisha's servant or apprentice, or whatever you might want to call him, he did something he ought not to have done, running after Naaman to get some presents after Naaman had been cured. And we see here in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 27, because of that infraction, in effect, Elisha put a curse upon him. The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, meaning unto Gehazi, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. Well, there's nothing in the text to suggest that Gehazi was a Gentile. No, he was an Israelite. He was an Israelite prophet of one of the schools of prophecy of our people. But he was turned white, and not only that, the curse was that whiteness of skin would be upon his seed forever. Which means that today there would be a white people who would not be Gentiles, but who would be white. And there's also another mechanism. I went to Nigeria, as I think you all would know, and I remember being made to understand that those who are lepers, in the biblical sense, not those suffering from Hansen's disease, which is something quite different, but it's called leprosy today, biblical leprosy, and those who are those who are albinos are generally shunned by the society. So they let me know that there were some villages where all of them were either lepers in that biblical sense or albinos. So if they are all sort of pale of skin in those Nigerian villages, and tending to mate amongst themselves under laws, well-known laws of genetics, there would be a much greater chance that that sort of deep pigmentation gene would be passed on. So you could, in effect, create a species, a new human species that would be white of skin. And if further, because the sun is not very forgiving of those, who are depigmented like that, if they then all tended to move and go to cooler climes, you can also have not only a speciation, but also a geographic separation. And that's how Europe as a whole could tend to become white as well. I'm making that point to say this. I started off by talking about that reconciliation that would take place between Ephraim and Judah. and about Ephraim being likened unto a cake not turned, with the implication because they mix with the people, they would tend to become white of skin. Even though, fundamentally they are of Israelite or a Negro paternal seed line, but now looking white. And that would also tend to explain how it could be that our brother Putin could be Israelite, but to all appearances and intents and purposes, a white man, but of the tribe of Joseph. You understand? So when the reconciliation comes, of which Scripture has prophesied, in part that reconciliation between Judah and Ephraim, to where Judah would no longer vex Ephraim, and Ephraim would no longer, I forget the exact phrase that's used. Let me get it exactly. As long as I'm using it. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 30, okay. The envy, right? Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. Okay, so that reconciliation is to take place across this tribal boundary, but in part it is going to appear to be a reconciliation as well over a color line. So we need to address the whole question of, color differentiation amongst peoples and how it arose and how it gets propagated and etc. To where you could have purely, completely Israelite seed line people who are white, which would be the seed line descendants of Gehazi. Or you can have, Russia being at the beginning and certainly a Negro society, and that is undisputed now. The evidence is there in abundance. Just from, the depictions of those, founding royals, Vlad the Impaler, and etc. When you go to the original portraits, they were Negro. There has been some whitening out that has been attempted as to that, but with determined search you can find the actual original portraits which do depict them as Negro. Okay, and there's a fellow named posting on YouTube under the handle KJ, was it K? KJ, KMZ. Look up KMZ and history, KMZ history, and he has put together a lot of those original Negro portraits, because it's not only Russia, it's all over Eastern Europe, the Slavic countries, it's all over Western Europe as well, it's all over the British Isles. And that is sort of corroborated by Scripture, because the northern tribes were scattered out according to book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, verses 40 to 45, at the time of that Assyrian invasion. And they went where never before mankind dwelt. So we became the aboriginal people of basically all the lands, the Americas, Northern Europe, Western Europe, far northern Eastern Europe, the Far East, the South Pacific, into Africa, those lands where Ham had not taken up residence previously. Okay, and that's why the Negro ended up in what is called today's sub-Saharan Africa, because Ham had not taken up residence there. Okay, so we became the aboriginal people everywhere. But wherever we went, Esau was not far behind. however long it might have taken for them to follow, along with Ishmael and the others who were the Psalms 83 Confederates, because they knew that we had sinned against our God, and part of the punishment for that sinning was that we could be reduced into captivity. So they came and they took advantage of that. Okay, so this is what this talk is about. As I said, the lecture part of it is to be found in an audio tape, and I give the link to it in the description box. It was done way back in January. I shared it with Brother Big Levi, and it may or may not have been shared by him on his community page. Okay, so with that, I give all praises, I give all glory, I give all thanks, I give all exaltation unto the Most High, Yahweh. And to those who are listening, I say Shalom.